this particular case, so far, we are talking about adults. The question becomes, Dr. Dibinga, consenting adults. And that really is the question on the table here, whether Cassie Ventura, whether the other victims actually consented to this, or was this just as the defense attorneys and all the are painting that, listen, these were two drug addicts in a bad relationship and people have all been there. What are your thoughts about this?
Well, look, as somebody who's been in the game in terms of rapping and putting out albums and touring and things like that, I'm familiar with how cutthroat the industry is and how people have had to do incredible things to advance themselves. And I think that that's a big part of this. I think that this idea that these were just people who were just cold drug addicts or whatever they said who just love parties, I think it's nonsense. R. Kelly is an R&B figure, right? So Diddy is really the first person in hip hop to really suffer the consequences of the Me Too movement. Me Too movement skipped over rappers, and it really bothered me that a lot of these guys were not called to task like some of these other guys, the Weinsteins, the Bill Cosbys, and all of that. This is a moment for us to really reflect. I personally, do not believe that Cassie and these guys are lying and making up stuff and just trying to get attention. I don't believe in any of that. I believe at the end of the day that Diddy has always been a violent person. I believe that this is a person who inside himself is a small person. And so it's always had a need to dominate and control people. And he's not the only one in hip hop. We come out of a culture, particularly those of us who are part of that hip hop generation. If we go back and listen to the music, a lot of the stuff, a lot of it was about sex and relationships with underage people. BBD, Do Me Baby, Backstage, Underage, Adolescent, how you doing? LL Cool J, Big Ol' Butt. I was down at the high school, whatever. Like, we came out of this culture. And a lot of us were too young to understand what was going on. We danced to it. Now we're older. We're parents, aunties, uncles, or whatever. And now we need to be part of the group that's going to hold our community accountable. So I'm hoping that it all comes out. I hope that there's not any particular glitches or whatever that leads to some form of mistrial, because this story needs to be told. And it's chilling hearing all of the stories, but at the same time, I'm glad that these stories are coming out so we can know so much of this behind the scenes stuff about the growth of hip hop that people just don't know about.
Dr. Dibinga, I want to stay with you for one moment, especially because you have been in the industry. In court, there were many emails where Cassie Ventura looks like she did want to participate. And I know that can be explained in many different ways. People get themselves in bad relationships and often do things for their partners they don't want to do. Does it extend to this for the normal average person? Probably not. But for her, this was the threshold. And of course, there were times where she said she was abused. I'm just wondering, if you were on that jury, would that make a difference to you that there were, in fact, some texts where she said, hey, I am ready for a freak off and I love you? Or she was doing drugs on her own, or she would call male escorts after they left on her own. All of that did come out from her own mouth. And I'm wondering just how you feel about, especially, again, being part of the industry.
Well, look, people have to understand. I mean, look at the age difference between, Cassie and Diddy. Look at her career trajectory as it relates to their relationship. And I hope that the people who are prosecuting Diddy are doing a good job. I haven't watched every ounce of the trial, are doing a good job of helping people understand the pressures that a lot of these young women particularly go through to be part of the industry. And so my hope is that these people on the jury will look at the scale. My hope of what he did versus what she may have done afterwards. I hope that they will have people who are trauma and abuse experts who can speak about things like Stockholm Syndrome and how people may feel attached, to their captor. I'm somebody who's also worked internationally in the field of sex trafficking. And so I understand what it's like for somebody to feel like, and people say, well, she was a singer, she was famous. It doesn't matter. I know exactly, I've seen what it's like for people to feel like they have to be under the thumb of somebody, even when that person is not around. And so regardless of what she may have done here and there, there's a larger network of issues that she, as far as I can tell, was a victim to. And so I'm hoping that the jury can indeed see through that, but it's up to the prosecution to make sure that that is happening.